I showed up to my sister's wedding after 11 years of silence, and the first thing I heard wasn't music or laughter. It was my cousin's voice, sharp and incredulous. "Who let her in?" she whispered loudly, as if I were a gatecrasher instead of a blood relative. Another voice followed, low and amused. "Is that really Ava? I barely recognized her." I paused just inside the entrance of the glass-walled reception hall, feeling dozens of eyes sweep over me like scanners. In that instant, I understood something painful and familiar. To them, I was still the girl who left, the dramatic one, the failure, the ghost who disappeared. None of them had the slightest idea who I had become. My name is Ava Morgan. I'm 32 years old. 11 years ago, I packed a single suitcase, walked out of my childhood home, and never went back. There wasn't one explosive argument or some scandalous betrayal that drove me away. It was quieter than that. A steady erosion, a lifetime of being compared, corrected, minimized. My younger sister, Lily, was the golden one, effortlessly charming, academically gifted, photogenic in every family picture. I was the sensitive one, the dramatic one, the one who could never quite measure up. If Lily won a scholarship, I was asked why I didn't apply. If she lost 5 pounds, I was gently advised to try the same. If she smiled, the room lit up. If I spoke, someone eventually interrupted. By the time I was 21, I felt like background noise in my own life, so I left. I moved 3 states away with no job, no connections, and a stubborn need to prove, mostly to myself, that I was more than the family disappointment. I worked in coffee shops, bookstores, and eventually landed a junior position at a small marketing agency. I stayed late, I volunteered for the projects no one wanted, I watched tutorials at midnight, and built skills I hadn't known I possessed. Over time, I found my rhythm in digital strategy and brand storytelling. 5 years in, I launched my own consultancy. It started with one client in a borrowed desk in a friend's apartment. Now I have a small team, a steady roster of mid-sized companies, and more stability than I ever imagined. When Lily's wedding invitation appeared in my inbox, forwarded through a distant cousin because my mother wasn't sure of my address, I almost deleted it, but something tugged at me. Maybe curiosity, maybe unfinished business, maybe I just wanted to see if the ache I carried all those years had finally healed. I told myself I didn't care what they thought anymore. I told myself I was going back as a guest, not as a wounded daughter. The venue was a sprawling vineyard estate with white drapery and fairy lights woven through olive trees. Everything looked curated, expensive, flawless, very Lily. I wore a tailored emerald dress and simple heels, nothing flashy, just polished. For a fleeting second, standing near the entrance with the golden sun dipping behind the hills, I felt composed, grounded, whole. Then my aunt spotted me. "Ava," she gasped, her hand flying to her chest, "we didn't think you'd actually come." Her smile was thin, stretched tight across surprise. "I'm sure Lily's thrilled," she added, though her tone suggested the opposite. "I was invited," I replied evenly. She glanced around as if checking whether anyone else was witnessing this exchange. "Well, I'm not sure where you're seated. You might want to check with the coordinator." Translation: you weren't expected. Inside, I searched for my mother. I found her near the champagne tower, radiant in silver gown, laughing with Lily's future in-laws. Our eyes met. For a second, something flickered there. Shock? Guilt? Then she composed herself and waved politely, the way you greet a neighbor you vaguely recognize. She didn't walk over. She didn't hug me. Lily stood at the center of a constellation of bridesmaids, glowing in lace and confidence. When I approached, her smile froze for half a heartbeat. "Ava," she said, "wow, you're here." "It's your wedding. I wouldn't miss it." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Let's just keep today smooth, okay? No tension. I really want everything to be perfect." I nodded. Of course she did. My place card led me to table 14, tucked near the catering station. I sat beside strangers and distant acquaintances, while the family table gleamed near the dance floor. I told myself it didn't matter, I was above this now. But when the photographer began calling out for family portraits, and my mother gathered cousins, uncles, even Lily's college roommate, yet somehow forgot me, I felt the old sting reopen. "Immediate family only," she announced brightly. I stepped forward. "I'm immediate family." She hesitated. "Oh, sweetheart, maybe we'll do a separate one later." Later never came. During dinner, my uncle slid into the empty chair beside me, the scent of whiskey heavy on his breath. "So, Ava," he drawled, "what are you doing these days? Still bouncing around?" "I run a brand consultancy," I said calmly. He chuckled. "Consultancy, that's a big word." I smiled politely. "It's been good to me." He patted my arm as if indulging a child's fantasy. "Well, as long as you're happy." I excused myself before my composure cracked. Outside, the vineyard air was cool and fragrant. I opened my phone, grounding myself in reality. Emails from clients, a contract signed that morning, a deposit confirmation for a 5-figure campaign, proof of the life I'd built without them. I was about to slip away quietly when someone approached. "You're Ava, right?" I turned to see a poised woman in her late 50s. "I'm Margaret, the grown's aunt. Lily mentioned you work in branding." "I do." Her eyes widened slightly. "You didn't, by any chance, lead the rebrand for North and Pine?" I blinked. "Yes, that was my team." She let out a soft laugh. "They've been thrilled with the results. Revenue's up, engagement doubled. We were all impressed." Heat rose to my cheeks, not shame this time, but validation, real, earned validation. Before I could respond, I heard my mother's voice drifting from the terrace. "Ava's always had potential, she just needed time to grow up." Margaret followed my gaze. She seemed to understand without explanation. "You don't owe anyone smallness," she said quietly. The speeches began soon after. Lily's maid of honor told childhood stories, the best man cracked jokes. Then my mother stood, champagne glass lifted. "To my beautiful Lily," she began, glowing with pride, "and to both my daughters, each finding her way in her own time." There it was, the subtle dig wrapped in sentiment. I stood. The room hushed. "I'll keep this brief," I said, my voice surprisingly clear. "I left home 11 years ago because I felt invisible. Tonight, I realized I don't feel invisible anymore." My mother shifted uncomfortably. Lily stared at her bouquet. "I built a life I'm proud of, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to myself that I was capable." I didn't list accomplishments, I didn't show slides, I didn't expose anyone. I simply claimed space. "I hope your marriage is everything you dream of, Lily, truly, and I hope one day we can know each other as adults, not as roles we were assigned." Then I sat down. The silence wasn't hostile, it was thoughtful. After the reception, Margaret found me again. "If you're ever interested in expanding into corporate partnerships," she said, pressing a card into my hand, "call me." I left before the dancing began. My phone buzzed the entire drive home, messages ranging from offended to defensive. "Why make it about you?" my mother wrote. Lily texted, "You blindsided me." But there was also one from a cousin. "I didn't realize. I'm sorry." And another from Margaret. "You handled that with grace." Weeks passed. Work thrived. A new contract came through, North and Pine expanding into 2 new markets. Margaret kept her word and introduced me to another board. Slowly, my business grew in ways I'd only dreamed of. One evening, Lily called. "I've been thinking," she said hesitantly. "I didn't know how much you were carrying." "I know," I replied. "You didn't know how much you were carrying." "I know," I replied. "You didn't know how much you were carrying." "I'm sorry." The apology wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I need time," I told her gently. For once, she didn't argue. Standing in my apartment later that night, city lights glowing beyond the windows, I realized something simple and powerful. I hadn't returned to reclaim their approval. I'd returned to measure my own growth. And the truth was, I no longer needed them to see me clearly. I saw myself. Sometimes going back isn't about proving who you've become. It's about confirming you're no longer who you were. I walked into that wedding as the girl who once felt invisible. I walked out as a woman who understood her worth, quietly, completely, and without apology.